Hi, y'all. Welcome back to the BirthFit podcast. This is episode number 218, and I will be chatting with Isabella of Whose Body Is It in just a few minutes. But first, a few updates, a few announcements, all the good stuff. So, reminder everything in this episode is for your educational purpose only. Our goal with this podcast is to offer you choice, offer you perspective, offer you a different lens or, question perhaps some limiting belief systems that you have going on. By no means are we here to make your choices for you. We want you to make your own intuitively guided, informed choices about your body and your family. So take the information as education and you form your own choices and decisions that are in alignment with your values and your family's values. So, yeah, big announcement. B Community. B Community has launched, and this is an evolution for us. This is something I am super stoked about, and it is a monthly membership. This is where fitness, education, and connection meet under one umbrella. This is for women by women. So you get me, you get Coach Leah, you get Coach Kat, you get Coach Hannah, all of us behind, the BirthFit B Community umbrella. So, like I said, fitness in the form of general strength and conditioning. We train 4 days a week, and this includes a mind body connection piece, a mind body reflection piece at the end of the training day. It includes a strength and or skill and some metabolic conditioning. It is designed to be done with minimal equipment. So yes, you do this at home, maybe in your garage gym, or you take a kettlebell or some dumbbells to the park, meet a group of women there, and you can do this together. Minimal equipment and less than an hour. Fitness is just one aspect of our daily lives, and your family can join too. So, like I said, grab some equipment, go to the park, have a group meetup, whatever. This is designed to be fun, efficient, and straight to the point. We have a lot going on in our lives outside of fitness. We are modern women, modern mothers, wives, sisters, business owners, and we know that fitness is important. We know that training and being strong and having endurance is super critical for health and wellness overall. But we also know that we want to participate and be present in our daily lives and the activities and daily lives of our family members. We don't want fitness to take 2 hours. Hello, B community. This is training. This is training for your everyday life. So we'd love to have you join for just the fitness sake of things. Education, monthly speakers and or discussion topics. Speakers have joined us monthly for years now, and it's been a huge thing just for the leaders and coaches, and we wanted to expand this, which is why we now have B Community. We've had some, amazing leaders or amazing speakers come speak to our leader group, like Lily Nichols and Jennifer Mercier. So now you have access to them when you join the B Community group. We also feature women that are inside of this community. Each month we will have a woman of the month, and she will share about her life and her entrepreneurial journey and or whatever else is going on in her life that you probably are going through very similar obstacles in the road. And yeah, I know you can relate to that. So monthly speakers, woman of the month. And then community connection in the form of virtual gatherings. So community is key to us as humans thriving. It's been researched, it's been talked about in the Bible. There's documentation everywhere that connection is like vital for us thriving as humans. We all learn from each other when we show up authentically and we share from a place of love. So we love to have big, beautiful, messy discussions so that we as women can grow, we can evolve as mothers, as nourishers, and really just show up as the best version of ourselves for our community. So for our community and for our families. So go check out B Community, go to birthfit.com, click under B programs, and you'll find the B Community there. So let me get Isabella in here. I know, boom, boom, boom. I'm super stoked to talk with her. If you don't follow her on Instagram, I would encourage you to do so. She is somebody that is not afraid to have the tough conversations. And just a little background about her. She is a life coach for sovereign women, a trained hypnotist, passionate birth worker, and podcaster. She has her own podcast, Whose Body Is It? She also does one-on-one coaching, virtual coaching, and she teaches women the tools to stop getting triggered by every freaking thing. Cultivate resilience, increase self-confidence, and birth and sovereignty. On the podcast, on Whose Body Is It podcast, she interviews radical women from around the world, raising consciousness on the harms of transgender ideology, porn, and prostitution, and exposing all the things we've been told are good for us as women. So, you may not agree with everything she has to say. However, if you know me, you know I'm one not to shy away from a good, solid conversation and, really explore. I really don't like when we just don't have both sides of a conversation. Actually, there's more than two sides to a conversation. So, there's lots of oh, junk, mess, propaganda going on in our schools, our public schools these days. And for those of you that have children in school systems, this is something I would really encourage you to think about, what they are seeing, what is being put in their brain daily. Think of your brain as the most expensive, most valuable real estate. So what's taking up space in there? And I want you to think about that for your kiddos too. So that's just something to keep in mind. I have a whole list of topics I hope to cover with Isabella. And, I just a few things I want to talk about with her, are definitely what she covers on her podcast, the transgender ideology, her journey from getting kicked out of a fertility awareness method educational program, instructor program, because she refused to use birthing person and phrases like that. She stood strong in saying the words woman, women, and birthing mother. I definitely want to talk to her about her experience with COVID and injections and the HPV injection and her journey as a birth doula. So hopefully we get through all of that and you listen to this episode with an open heart and open mind. If you have any feedback, by all means, email us info@birthfit.com. And I read every bit of feedback. So even if it's good or bad, but I will only give you a t-shirt if it's good. So for our review of the day, and like I've mentioned in the past, when I read your review, email us and you will get a free t-shirt. Email us info@birthfit.com. So hello, ashbash19. Your review is simple and sweet, and I love it. I've been a fan of BirthFit for many years, and now I get to listen to all these amazing birth center speakers. Just amazing. So, yes, simple, straight to the point. Thank you for leaving us a 5-star review. If you get something out of this episode, even if it causes you to question maybe a limiting belief system you may have, if it causes you to question maybe what's going on locally in your school systems, I would say you got an awesome pearl of wisdom from this episode. Please leave us a review. 5 stars, please. And hopefully I will read your review and you can get some BirthFit swag. Anyways, we are waiting on Isabella. And if you need to use the restroom, grab a nice beverage and definitely meet us back here in like 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you want. Yeah, I'm gonna put this on mute so you don't hear me slurp water. Mm. Hey y'all, while we're waiting on Isabella to join us, I want to tell you about an event that she is moderating in Austin, Texas, at the Austin Public Library. This will be Friday, June 10th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And if you go to her website, whosebodyisit.com/events, you will see it there. And a little bit more information. The event is titled Women Leaving the Left. Join us Friday, June 10th, for a panel discussion among women who have found themselves ejected from or alienated by the left. Many feminists today find themselves politically homeless on account of the left's support for ideology and legislation that runs counter to material realities, civil liberties, free speech, and women's sex-based rights. At the same time, many women don't feel aligned with the right-wing values either. Beyond the feminists who support free speech, bodily autonomy, and civil liberties have been alienated by a feminist movement that invested in political purity and allied with political parties that do not represent them. Women leaving the left will address the supposedly unspeakable, the things we are not supposed to say, the conversations no one is having, and the issues social media and mainstream media will not allow. Hello, censorship. Get your tickets. You can grab your tickets on her website there. So let's let Isabella in. I see her. Hello.
Hey, Lindsay, how are you?
I'm so good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm getting ready for the events next week.
Yeah, I was just announcing it as we were waiting on you. So do you want to share anything? Because as soon as we're done, I'm going to try to get this episode up this weekend.
Awesome. Yay.
And then we can dive into who you are.
But before we dive in,
Yeah, tell about your event in Austin.
oh my gosh. Okay, well, I'm so excited. So this is a really historic event, and it came together in a very short amount of time, but it's going to be a panel of speakers, really big heads in this debate. Posey Parker, Kelly J, now going by Kelly J, is going to be joining us from the UK, and I mean, she has started a whole women's movement in the UK that has really made so much headway on this issue. And so she's going to be there. Mary Lou Singleton, Megan Murphy, Carrie Smith, and Michelle Evans. And also something interesting about this panel is that we do have a combination of women who are pro-choice and then pro-life or anti-abortion rights. So that is not something that I have seen happen in radical feminism or in the gender critical movement, because radical feminists hold, an analysis that women are sovereign beings, over our bodies. So it really is an event that like honors free speech. And so we're really excited, and we hope that it also draws not only women who are leaving the left, but also women who are already on the right, so that we can find common ground and really come together on this particular issue.
So awesome. I hope y'all have more events in the future, because I think, events like this and free speech and discussion, like it's also necessary.
For sure. And everyone's been like, wow, the public library is like letting you do this.
Yeah, I was like, whoa.
Yeah, so they had hosted actually another event, a Wolf event. Women's Liberation Front had put on a panel a couple months ago. And so that was the signal to us that, wow, this is like actually an institution that it isn't book burning and actually does honor free speech. So that's really cool. And I think maybe unique to Texas. Like I don't think we could do such an event at a New York Public Library or LA, public library. So this is pretty cool.
Awesome. And I can't wait to join. I know my friend and I are coming up from New Braunfels, and so we're stoked. We're stoked y'all are having it. But yeah, let's dive into you. Let the BirthFit audience know who you are and how you show up in this world right now.
Sure. So I am currently focusing on coaching women who are feeling ostracized in their friend groups, who are working on clarifying their values around the trans issue, around industrial birth, around vaccines, all the kind of hot topics, and who are having a kind of identity crisis. And so I'm doing that via coaching, and then also on the podcast, raising awareness, raising consciousness on the issues that really just hit me over the head over the past 6 years. And with that momentum, has come events like this and further connection. But before that, I was a doula. I was a birth doula, working mostly in hospital births, attending hospital births, witnessing hospital births, birthing center births, home births with licensed home birth midwives, and working as a postpartum doula in New York City. I was also teaching hypnobirthing. I was like one of the hypnobirthing doulas of the city, and I dove into that and became kind of, I guess, known for helping women mitigate harm in hospital births. So yeah, I started to kind of push the envelope a little bit, I think, in that sense, and saying like, oh, there actually is a hierarchy in birth, and vaginal birth is optimal for mammals, and breastfeeding is optimal for mammals, and it's okay to say that. And if I'm here to change outcomes, like, wouldn't I want to learn the most I can offer that to clients if that's what they're hiring me for, you know. And so yeah, there was already kind of pushback around that. And then I was teaching reproductive health workshops, helping women come off of hormonal birth control, introducing them to methods like fertility awareness method, teaching them their primary fertile signs, all of that. And there was an open critique of hormones in that context. But as soon as, you know, I would raise questions around, you know, young women on testosterone or children on Lupron, after seeing what Lupron had done to friends of mine with endometriosis. So yeah, that's kind of when the trans issue started to rear its head. And I was like, that's curious. Why can't I critique hormones in that context? Like, what's the difference? They're the same manufacturers, they're the same companies, but it's for a different purpose. So
interesting.
And then I escaped New York and moved to Texas, and I'm having the time of my life here.
Awesome. Well, yeah, there's so many notes I have and so many things I want to cover. But let's back up and talk about like what you saw and what you became like eyes open to as a birth doula in New York City. Because if I remember correctly, I listened somewhere. Are you born and raised in New York?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. That's wild.
Yeah.
And yeah, so what was your journey like as a birth doula in New York City?
I think it was a pretty standard experience. I think in terms of my motivations and my training, you know, I did my doula training in 2016 in Brooklyn, and with Doula Trainings International, which is actually founded by two women who are based here in Austin, and I was, you know, eager to make a change. I'd watched The Business of Being Born, like most doulas do before they sign up for a training. I was just totally motivated to make some change in the world, and I knew I wanted to have a direct impact on women.
Yeah.
I had been doing a lot of childcare, and so I knew that being in people's homes felt really good to me, and I like to be around mothers, and mothers like to be around me. That was also something that I noticed, that mothers liked having me around as the kind of makeshift or attempt at village support. So my first birth, it actually makes me feel a little sick to think about it now, but I was quite voyeuristic. My ego was just kind of like out of this world. You know, I was just trying to like absorb every minute of the experience. And because it was my first birth, and because it was a hospital birth that had all the kind of standard intervention and surveillance, I don't think I was able to show. I know I wasn't able to show up for that woman. And I certainly wasn't able to save her from anything, which I think she maybe thought I could at the time. So I was just taking it all in. And so I went from, you know, saying like, this is going to be amazing, to seeing, oh wait, this is like actually terrible. So now what are the steps that I'm going to take to make this less terrible in this context? And a couple years later, I found hypnobirthing, which was a kind of a stepping stone to eventually doing what I do now, which is, you know, supporting women exclusively outside of the system. And I found Free Birth Society, and that was like a, you know, just
it's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, Emily Saldea and Yolanda Norris Clark are still two of my mentors and teachers. And I remember Emily saying, like, are you a reformist or are you a radical? You know, can you make change from within, or are you ready to like totally flip the script and work towards a whole different paradigm? And at that point, I think I realized that I was wanted to take more of a radical approach to helping women. And so
it's awesome. It's interesting when you when you have that question. And I had a mentor midwife in LA that said something along the lines of, you know, the system is designed as it is and it's working just as it is. You just have to step out of the system, you know, and telling moms that, or whoever. But when you start to look at it that way, you're like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Like,
And it's just like, and one of the other realizations I had, I was like, if doulas are a threat to the system, like actually, we wouldn't be let in the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's so it's infantilizing, like for the doula, like for them to be like, oh yeah, you're welcome, okay, just show us your certificate, and
Yeah.
like, and the doula has this inflated sense of like power and like change and like hero
Yeah.
identity, and then yeah, it's wild, and then the reason why I think really had to stop was the money part. I was like, wow, I am accepting money to provide this illusion of protection that I know I can't fulfill, but they don't know I can't fulfill. You only know once you're in it and going through it. So it felt unethical as well to, and it also sent a really confusing message. And this is something that I want to talk more about, but it sends a really confusing message to say bad things happen there, but I'm going to go with you anyway and take money.
Yeah, it's out of alignment almost. Like that's how I felt with doing births in the hospital. And I don't know, I'm sure this happens in New York hospitals, but early on in my doula career, so I lived in LA for 13 years. One of the biggest hospitals there had doula trainings, or like you could come learn how to be a doula and show up in the hospital. And I remember sitting there and thinking like, oh, this is cool, they're accepting a doulas. But once I showed up and they started like their spiel teaching, you're like, wait a sec, they're just telling me how to be. Like, I can do this, but I can't do that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm not coming back here.
Totally. It's such a conflict of interest. It's such an obvious conflict of interest. And actually one thing that that my doula trainers in 2016 recommended that I do, and I don't think it's necessarily specific to them, but they recommended that after we attended births, we write handwritten thank you notes to the OBs. Right? To like get on their good side. They recommend us.
Yeah. I was just
that's weird. Like something's not right about that. Like, who do I work for?
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so let's jump into why you moved to Texas. And mainly, like, I listened to a few of your Instagram lives and your discussions, where you started questioning injections. And it wasn't just, the COVID one. It was like HPV. It was kind of everything. And I think that started prior to COVID for you. And then you moved and are having the time of your life now. So can you touch on that journey a little bit?
Sure. And I will say that my mom is fifth generation Texan, so I did have a history here. I am one of those New Yorkers who also moved here, and I have a very rich history here that has gone widely, I think, unexplored for me, in part because I was so indoctrinated growing up to think that, people in the South were not as smart as Yankees and not as cultured, and, they have lots of guns, and that's scary because guns are scary. And we need to, make sure there aren't a lot of guns around. Like all the narratives. I remember watching Bowling for Columbine and bawling and going home to my mom and just slamming like our family for like hunting deer or like duck. Just not being able to make the connection. But I grew up in a very liberal environment. But my mom was always a registered Republican. I think now I actually lean more. She's kind of moved more blue and I've moved like more libertarian, but yeah, it's so crazy. It's so crazy. But yeah, I think for me, the first like thing that I started to question was industrial birth. And then it was reproductive health, education and hormones. And then, working with mothers and babies, the injection thing just comes up. It just does, because it's a thing where, families are suffering and children are suffering, babies are suffering, and women are suffering in pregnancy too from experimental injections. So, and then it also come up as a doula, as a professional, whether or not I would get the Tdap booster or, the flu shot. So yeah, it was coming up quite a bit. And I peaked with that probably in like 2018. And once you start to question authority and all the things that you've been told are good and safe, it can be a very lonely experience. It definitely was for me. I think I had people kind of along the way to soften the blow a little bit. But it was a really lonely time. And when I tried to broach the topic with friends, it was just an immediate, like, don't even go there. Just like utter shock, very little dialogue. Just like, who are you? I mean, even to critique Planned Parenthood. I remember when I started teaching fertility awareness method, and openly critiquing Planned Parenthood as an institution, and what they were promoting, especially with the trans stuff, being a wide distributor of hormones for adolescent girls, wrong sex hormones for adolescent girls. But even before that, I just would have friends just say, that method you teach, natural family planning, like that's what Christians do, Isabella. And me being like, and I'm grateful to the Catholic Church for providing that scientific research that gives us the efficacy rates of these methods. That yes, I can hold that, like, I'm not a Catholic or Christian or follow any patriarchal religion, and that I really appreciate the results of this study. I can hold both. And it wasn't even like I was teaching abstinence or anything like that. It was, fertility awareness is quite a secular method. But so just, I think COVID stuff just was the final straw, I think, with ending a lot of relationships, friendships, connections. And it got hard to practice normalcy. That's how I describe it. Those 2 months, March, April, it was until May. It was about 60 days that I was in New York for the lockdowns when everything started. And I would get up out of bed and I'd say, you're going to touch surfaces today. You are going to touch doorknobs today. You are going to get on your bike and you're going to bike to Brooklyn and see your chiropractor and bike back. And you're going to sit in the park and you're going to eat, and when you're eating outside, your fingers might touch your mouth, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because that was the level of insanity and fear that was present in New York, and I know other places as well. And so, I remember reaching for to touch the elevator button and going, oh, should I use my elbow?
Yeah.
So it was really starting. I could see how it was affecting my mental health and how hard it was to remain psychologically safe.
Yeah.
And so I attended my last birth. That was with a licensed homebirth midwife in Brooklyn, and it was a beautiful birth. And then I was out of there.
And what made you choose Texas? Because of family roots here, or?
I had a free place to stay for about a month.
Awesome.
It was, I had a free place to stay in South Texas for about a month. And that was a time where I could just sort out, what is this whole virtual business thing? Can I start a virtual business? What's this online circle situation? I was running online circles for a couple months where women were paying $5 to just hop in, and I choose a different topic. And so that month was a lot of exploration of how can I go from going, home to home, teaching childbirth education and attending births, to switching to this remote business life. And then I had known 2 women here in Austin, and I just thought I should try to plan some regional meetup with other women who are also in the Free Birth Society membership. And from that meeting, I was like, wow, there are radical women here. I can do it here. I had a blank slate. It wasn't like I was choosing between New York, and New York was just a no. There was no one there. I had lost all my friends except for 1 or 2 at that point, and even the friends the 1 or 2 that left, I had to really kind of talk into meeting me even in a park. It was really an intense time, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. And yeah, Texas just, I wouldn't say I decided to move here. I guess I kind of tried it out and I just kept going.
It's awesome. Yeah. It was working out. Why not? Everything fell into place.
Yeah. And I think, I know we'll get into like the trans stuff, but Austin is a super liberal city. I mean, we both know this, and there's a different energy when you know that the state is on your side, that you know the history of this place is on your side. That it's a different feeling than New York, with injections and the trans stuff, where the law is not on your side. I mean, the law wants to punish you. Like, if someone snitches, there is a container, there is a context in which you can be reported. I mean, with the snitch hotlines, with the injections and COVID, and even with misgendering in New York City, in terms of bathroom laws. So that also brought me a deep sense of comfort and security, that even though I'm in like a liberal city and I might butt heads, with people here, of course, that when I look at the state and the politics here, that like the red state is actually on my side, other than abortion rights, of course, which is a big discrepancy, but something that I'm willing to contend with. I rather contend with that here than injections and the trans stuff in a state like New York.
Yeah. So let's dive into transgender. And I just recently listened to the podcast you did with Yolanda, and I thought that anything, like, she blows my mind on anything, because she can speak so, well and go deep and, all angles. But yeah, you touched on stuff earlier about drugs and hormones and same manufacturers. And, I think there was a movie that just came out, like a documentary by the Daily Wire. And I haven't watched it yet, but, they did some promos and some snippets of, I think it's Matt Walsh interviewing people. And, what crushes me is I went to A&M and was a biology major. So,
Cool.
I was like,
wow,
biology reality, like, we can't even admit this. And like you said early on in the beginning of our conversation, was like, I want to help women. I want to make a difference. So, natural birth, unmedicated birth, breastfeeding, like, why can we not talk about these things? So yeah, let's dive in. And, for some of our audience, they may not have even touched the subject of transgenderism. And, they might be like, oh, I'm not going to talk about it. Or, like, I think you said this one time, like, I don't play sports. I'm not going to, that's not for me. So, I'm not going to do that. But why is this important, and why should we care?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should care first and foremost because naming our reality, the ability to name what we see, is fundamental to the way we move through the world. So coming to a common agreement on, like, this is a phone and I'm sitting on a futon and I'm wearing glasses. These help us. The ability to name our surroundings is what, like 2 and 3 year olds start to do. It is a total experience of human development that is essential to being able to discern what is what, and to take away, or to try to take away, our ability to name who is male and who is female is a huge part of that. And not only because we need to protect ourselves as women from male violence, but we need to be able to know that in order to also procreate, whether we are same-sex attracted or heterosexual. The ability to see something and being able to integrate that and perceive that human for who they are physiologically is really important. And when you think of things like sexual coercion, where this goes really sour, not just with sports, or gaslighting children or punishing children for naming their reality, which is what is happening in many schools. Children are punished for naming their male classmates as male or female classmates as female. But when you think about something like sexual coercion, it's really scary, right? We're talking rape culture. We're talking me declaring myself as a heterosexual woman and then being expected within trans ideology to accept a woman who calls herself a man, who's had her breasts removed and who has a beard, to accept her and see her as a potential sexual partner. Now that is rape culture. That is coercive rape culture. We as men and women are entitled to name our sexuality, to have boundaries around our sexuality. And that is not hateful, accusing a lesbian of being hateful because she doesn't want to have sex with a guy who's 6'2" and has silicone breasts and goes by Sally. It's not hateful. That is just human sexuality, and that is a boundary of human sexuality. So it's important because as women, we are already suffering greatly at the hands of pharmaceutical companies, pharmaceutical marketing. Mary Lou calls it the big pharma takeover of our lives. And women have been affected way more in this whole thing in terms of targeting in the use of pharmaceuticals in this whole thing than men. Planned Parenthood has said, you can probably find these numbers on their website as well. I think I have screenshots from webinars that they've done where they have been very open about the fact that 90% of the wrong sex hormones that they prescribe go to adolescent girls. So only 10% of the wrong sex hormones are going to men, to males, to boys, right? Adolescent boys. So I think it's also important to know what's going on, to sadly, understand the kind of mass hypnosis and psychosis that we've all been subjected to. Jennifer Billick talks about the transgenderism as a kind of gender identity industry. And she talks about it in a very corporate, speaking the language of money, that what we've all experienced is a very successful rebranding of transsexualism, right? It doesn't really have a ring to it. A transsexual kid doesn't really have a good ring to it. So now we have transgender kids. And so the push for all of the children in this, and to kind of claim that this is, that we are saving children by giving them wrong sex hormones, putting them on puberty blockers and castrating them both chemically and literally removing parts of their body, dismembering them, that this is somehow for them. It's wild. And so I think, asking ourselves, how did we get to a point where this is even a question? Is this okay or not? How is this even a debate? And then anyone who, is an intactivist knows how, male circumcision has been normalized. And so we can kind of find the ways that we've been desensitized. And I think for women especially need to be concerned because in the context of transhumanism, so our bodies being dismembered and our flesh being repurposed and this kind of merge of technology, one thing that will never be obsolete is our ability to reproduce. And so we will be used for that, even against our will until the end of time. And uterus transplants into men is not just a fearful thing that might happen. This is already happening. These medical experiments that women have been subjected to, whether that's in the inception of modern obstetrics, or what we're seeing now with the trans stuff, or uterine transplants, I think we need to be concerned. And placenta sales, the medical sales of our placentas is already has been widely normalized, and there's very little law around even regulating such a thing. So yeah, there's a lot of legal like gray area with all of the trans stuff, which is why we're seeing like the Texas Attorney General draft, this bill to constitute doing this to children, so putting them on wrong sex hormones, to constitute this as child abuse. Like we're seeing all these bills and laws pop up because it's a total free for all right now, and like we see with the injection companies, they are immune from liability. And so I think the industry has really capitalized on this like gray zone time. So, yeah, I would say most fundamentally, it is a total reversal of reality of what is up and what is down. And I think people should be afraid of what's been happening with free speech, and you mentioned censorship in the beginning. The ability to think critically about what is going on and to express concerns and to be in open dialogue with one another is just essential to like a democratic free society. And so the fact that we are not allowed to do this, or when we are punished for it, should scare people.
Yeah. Gosh, yes, there's so much there. And I think, what you hit on definitely is the children, and, how this, we'll come back to Big Pharma, but this sexual revolution, or this, sexual freedom, whatever we want to call it, it's, maybe we've swung the pendulum so far, and now, okay, fine for us that are adults, over 18, but now it's probably, if I dare say it, coming at the expense of our children and their health, and their mental health. And I forgot whose stories this was yesterday, but she was talking about Dr. Kinsey, and then this Dr. Maloney, or Dr.
John
Money, yeah. And he was the one that did believe that children were neutral at birth, and did an experiment on twins. And due to like a botched circumcision, and basically talked the parents into having one of the twins switch their gender. Anyways, long story short, you don't hear about the outcomes of these, but both of these twins died, one from an overdose and one from suicide. And like, I think this is where I want to tie it into the Big Pharma thing and the injections. And, for those that listen to the BIRTHFIT podcast, they know how I feel about injections. And we've talked about how they're exempt from liability. And, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some bills in the work about exemptions for, this kind of stuff, for exemption of liabilities. But none of what is like being pushed towards us has ever been reviewed for safety trials, none of it. And like, we talk about how birth control is the greatest experiment done on women ever. Well, these are just other experiments getting started, like the COVID injection, or HPV, or these hormone replacements, or hormone shifters. So it's wild to think about that we're in the beginning stages of more experiments, and it's crazy to think about this. So yeah, the big pharma, big money makers are just what was I reading? I think every person that transitions is something like, a dollar sign of at least $1 million, or to the pharmaceutical industry, which is wild to think about. Like, it's just it's a moneymaker.
Yeah, the lifetime. I mean, it's not just that one drug. I mean,
yeah, it's you got to take the pills, you got to take the injections forever. Right.
Yeah, it's a lifetime of medicalization, and I think we need to be talking more about the the reality of these people's lives, these men and women's lives, because we just see the shiny after photo, right? We see like Bruce Jenner and then Caitlyn Jenner. Wow, she's gorgeous. Like, like they did such a good job. I remember saying things like that, thinking like, wow, what a feat of medical technology, or wow, it just looks she looks so natural, or this is like, we're not seeing the post-op, we're not seeing the complications, we're not seeing the malpractice suits, we're not seeing the bacterial infections, we're not seeing mom and dad or a partner, draining the fluid from the chest, like what you would do maybe, if anyone had a mother or a grandma who had breast cancer and then had her breast removed, like these are the same procedures, these are the same surgeries. And the industry is wild. By 2026, the sex assignment, what's called sex reassignment surgery, which isn't real, it's a euphemism for, like castration and intense medical procedures, will have a profit margin. I think it was $1.6 billion.
Oh my gosh.
By 2026. Yeah, I learned that from Jennifer Billick, who's like the leading researcher on the money behind the gender, what she calls the gender identity industry. So even the term transgender, it's so, I never know what people are talking about when they say transgender, transgenderism. Are we talking about the experience of men who believe they're trapped in the wrong body? Are we talking about the experience of women who are trapped in the wrong body? Are these women heterosexual? Are they bisexual? Are they homosexual? Right? There's such nuance. Even when someone says to me the trans community, I'm like, who are you talking about? Which community, which members? It's not this kind of this group of 5 people who share the same thoughts. I mean, I guess I'm kind of in the trans community. I work with detransitioned women. I mean, I talk about this all day. I'm a member of the trans community. So yeah, it's just but yes, the industry, the money, the drugs. I think also something that should really scare people, if they haven't thought about this already, is that with the children, so when you are giving wrong sex hormones and interfering before a child has gone through puberty, it does become more difficult to identify who the men are and who the women are, which is what they want, what the transhumanists want. That they want a kind of a boundaryless world where sex isn't real, where we have no bounds of our sexuality, including like sex with inanimate objects. I mean, this isn't like hearsay. I mean, Martine Rothblatt wrote a book called From Transgender to Transhuman, where he outlines like exactly the world that he wants to see, which is what we are living in. And so, I mean, I think what really also scares me is thinking about like teenage girls and boys who are discovering their sexuality and then are, they find themselves in an intimate situation where they want to explore like the other person's genitalia or to kiss, and then they find out that the person that they're with isn't actually the sex that they're presenting. I mean, that would do a number on any adult, but you're talking about an adolescent, someone who's adolescent. I mean, so yeah, and this is where the coercive rape thing comes in, and it's not good for either party. I'm not suggesting that one person would be more of a victim even in that situation. We know with children that they are absolutely the victims in this scenario. So yeah, the distortion of what is what, who is who, it's very unsettling. And so that is the function of transing kids. That is the function of normalizing the kids. It's opening up a whole new market, like with what they did with the injections for adults, right? They've already captured children with the injection market. And now it was time to move back into the adult market. And they did a really good job. They made a lot of money and they captured a lot of adults. And yeah, so So yeah, I mean, you could think about it in a corporate sense. You could think about it in a kind of conspiratorial sense of why would they want us to have such a lack of grounding in our humanness. So there are a lot of ways to kind of think about this issue. And then just from a practical sense, like what we've seen in midwifery and in the birth world, it becomes harder to speak, right? We were getting to a point where everyone is like, that's not a vagina, that's a vulva. And like, just like, getting in the habit of saying vulva when we're talking about our vulvas, and saying vagina when we're talking about our vaginas. Being able to name our parts, being able to learn our primary fertile signs, and like really making some headway. And then, here comes birthing person and chest feeder. And that stuff you're feeling actually isn't sacred and unique to you. That whole woman thing, that whole sisterhood thing, that whole circle thing, that whole witch thing actually isn't so special. It actually isn't just about you. It's about everyone, and everyone is welcome, and it's for everyone, and everything is for everyone. And that's really disorienting. I spoke to one woman who came from a super fundamentalist Christian background, and a lot of women who are coming out of that world will gravitate towards paganism, right? Because there's like goddess worship, and I can see my goddesses in the background. And it had been totally transed. And she was like, wait a minute. Yeah. I thought this was the part of my journey where I could own that, like, women are powerful and that women can give sermons. Women can be preachers, in her community, like the women couldn't speak. The women were abused. The women were silenced. And she goes to paganism and she's like, this is the place where we could talk about women, right? And they're like, no. Not anymore. So yeah, that was a bit of a tangent.
I'm glad you touched on that, because I was going to bring it up, because over the last, I would say, just before COVID, I started getting shit on social about not using the word birthing person on BIRTHFIT. And, I was like, what the hell? Like, we have wombs, boobs, like we're different. And and I could not fathom like why. And I know the doula group you're speaking of, because like I started questioning some of the like our language didn't line up. And when COVID hit, I had to make a really big decision, and about what words we're using and what words we're not. And I'm very aware of language and the evolution of language changing, but I'm not going to call a birthing mother a birthing person. Like, I feel like she earned that right. Like, I am a mother, hear me roar. And it's just, it's like, can we not sit with and identify biological reality? And then also, if you want to identify as whatever you want to identify, great, that's fine. But it's a while, like, you're exactly right. We just got to a place where we could say vulva or yoni or whatever, and now we can't. Or you're ridiculed for, not including everyone.
Yeah. And it's like the women who are wanting to birth at home, like, know that in the hospital, like, that is a surveilled, medicalized experience. And so the cognitive dissonance of like the women who have had their breasts cut off, having births at home, like that's an interesting scenario, because there's an admission, right, of that place isn't for me. That's an industry, right? But their bodies have already been captured by the industry. They've cut their breasts off. They've been on testosterone. Maybe they have to stop testosterone when they're pregnant. So there's a weird like in between, and we're all obviously full of contradictions. I'm not suggesting that anyone is like totally 100% pure in their beliefs and values, but Yeah, I mean, so many leaders in the industry like you have been bullied and, pressured and questioned and trolled. And so that's just, I mean, I'm seeing more and more leaders just kind of stand their ground and be like, there's more of us. Like, we're not the minority in thinking this is ridiculous. And so let's all be brave together and make it known that we won't be made to do something that isn't aligned or, doesn't feel clear, and trusting that enough women will stay by your side. And I think that holds a lot of women back, like doulas who are maybe listening to this, who are like, oh, I could never do that in my community, or I don't know. Yeah. Everyone is like zipping their mouth shut because everyone also thinks that the other is not going to get it, or, and there will be conflict. Not that there won't be conflict, but I just keep hearing over and over from women, like, as soon as they reveal themselves, they realize that actually they had all these allies in their backyard.
Totally. Yeah. I know I won't take too much more of your time, but I wanted you to touch on, the abortion topic, and not specifically abortion, but how we as women, I think you did it live with Mary Lou.
You had her on the podcast. Yes. And I'm in no rush. I'm happy to spend the time as you need.
But like stepping into our power and also stepping out of the system. Yeah. And, what I don't think people realize is, we've had the power all along. And can you touch on maybe some of y'all's conversation and, that topic?
Yes. Yeah. So for those who don't know Mary Lou Singleton is a lifelong women's activist, medical freedom warrior, midwife, nurse practitioner, who was the author of the 2014 open letter to MANA, protesting the removal of the words woman and mother from the core competency curriculum. So, and that decision that MANA made, the Midwives Alliance of North America, set the tone for the whole birth world in North America. So that decision was very significant, and Mary Lou was protesting it. And Mary Lou was not allowed in at the conference that year, along with the other midwives who had signed the letter. And during my doula training, they opened the training saying that there had been this hateful letter circulating.
What?
And they were so disappointed in all these elder midwives who had signed this letter, hateful transphobic letter. And at the time I went, oh, terrible. Who are these horrid women? And too bad they don't get it. They're just, the kind of patronizing thoughts I would have about my mom. Yeah, like, she's just regressive. She doesn't get it. And poor thing. Really terrible. So with the abort, so the episode that we recorded is, I don't really think I've seen this angle covered anywhere else, because on the one hand, I'm all about learning fertility awareness and bringing women's health back into women's hands, and at-home abortion methods, and being your own herbalist, and all those things that yes, that was systematically taken away from us. And there is a learning curve, I think, moving forward, and a sourcing of, like, how do we reclaim and develop these skills again? Because they are skills. Yeah. And at the same time, I can't sit here and say we don't need the system. Because with criminalization, what we're looking at is, in the rare case that a woman having an at-home abortion would have a bacterial infection or hemorrhage, where will she go? That can be a life-threatening complication. And so where will she go? How will she be treated when she is in that system? I believe in emergency medicine. And so I wish at-home abortion to be the norm. Obviously, I don't support Planned Parenthood. I think clinical abortions are barbaric. In some respects, I think, I wish them to be rare. And what happens when we do have to interface with that system? Do we want to see women criminalized? And then this can, Mary Lou brought up very specific cases that have already occurred. So this is not, again, a future threat. And I want to make this clear about transgenderism too. We're not talking about a future threat. We're already seeing our worst fears come to light. We're already seeing women be impregnated by men in New Jersey state prisons, in California state prisons. And so none of this is a future threat. This is already happening. And this is what feminists have been warning us about for decades. Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned Matt Walsh and Daily Wire, and a part of me is like, okay, well, I'm glad, I guess it's becoming mainstream, and it's infuriating. I mean, I'm only like a couple of years into this. I can't imagine how the women, who are going to be at the panel, like 10, 20 years fighting for this, or like, oh, this dude comes along and is like, now he's the authority on what a woman is, and now he's getting all the fame and the accolades. It's like, I imagine it's quite infuriating, but with the episode, so we get into, what will happen to women if abortion is criminalized? And I think it's something that we all need to think about, whether you think abortion is immoral or not. Do you want to live in a world where women are not agents of their own bodies? And so Mary Lou put it very bluntly, do you believe that women like have civil rights? Like, do you believe that women should be state sanctioned or state regulated incubators? So everyone freaked out when she used the word incubator, but she wasn't calling women incubators. She was saying like, that is what we will become if the state is in charge of our bodies. So determining how much we're going to eat in our pregnancy, surveilling us if we're undernourishing our bodies. Are they going to accuse of trying to induce a miscarriage? What if they catch us drinking wine? What if they catch us smoking weed? What if they catch us in the jacuzzi after we've been told that we are being forced to carry out this pregnancy that we don't want? Yeah. I also appreciated her perspective on she didn't mention this in our episode, but everyone who's going to be on the panel next week at the Austin Public Library, we were on Megan Murphy's channel having an open discussion about abortion, and Mary Lou said when women come to her and say that they don't want to be pregnant, they want an abortion, what she's hearing is they don't want to step into motherhood, right? Because that's what ending the pregnancy is. It's not about the pregnancy. It's not just about the process of growing a baby and giving birth. This mother is saying, I do not want to become a mother. And anti-abortion activists will say, well, that's what adoption is for. But again, in that case, that woman would be a state sanctioned against her will, going through a pregnancy and a birth. And so yeah, I mean, I think Mary Lou and I are both critical of hypersexuality and the cavalier tone or kind of culture around abortion. Again, I wouldn't wish I don't think. Again, I wish medical abortion to be rare, and even at-home abortion, I wish to not be so common. But we are not at a place where women are educated enough around their fertility cycles and are taking responsibility. Yeah. And with any method, we don't have 100% effectiveness. And to say that it's just about women taking responsibility or avoiding men, I mean, that doesn't account for rape. That doesn't account for accidents. It doesn't account for our human error in practicing a method that is not 100% accurate. And I also don't think vasectomy is the solution. I don't think medicalizing men's lives and medicalizing men's reproductive systems is the answer either. So yeah, I think I've been seeing a lot of things in social media. Like, I mean, I love Kim Anami. The sex, and relationship guru, expert, Taoist, knowledge, most knowledgeable woman ever. And, she had put something out that was like, why I don't give a shit about abortion rights, and I was like, listen, I hear where she's coming from. She's not alone in that there will be women harmed by this. There already are women harmed by our abortion being criminalized. And so we are not, like, we don't have our own hospitals. Like, we don't have like RadFem hospitals and like pro-choice hospitals where, you can just go and be taken care of in the case of it being criminalized. Like, what are we going to do? It is going to be, it's going to be a challenge. And not to think that I don't think we can't do it. And Mary Lou also touched on, what she thought could be beneficial. Actually, like, is there anything good that might come from abortion being criminalized? And I think we both kind of agreed that taking women's health back into women's hands will certainly be, it'll create a kind of seriousness, kind of the fire under our asses to get serious again and Skillshare and become resourced.
Yeah, I have heard that as a positive, and I think that's super cool because, like you said, there's the lack of education. How did we get to this abortion in this timeline? What are the things that didn't happen or happened before that? And it's like we're not teaching women and young girls about their cycles, so they don't know that they're fertile a certain time of month. They don't know, just different. Their partners don't know about their cycles. So you don't have to be pro-choice or pro-abortion to, get that this conversation is important, and that you can be part of, either side to want to have a healthy discussion about it. It's taking the power back into women, and as nourishers and just really creative, special creatures, I think, is the positive that would come out of it. And like you said, sharing skill sets, and what happened, when somebody did not want a pregnancy before there was Western medicine. I forget where I heard this, but it was like, there's an energy, and there's a calling in, and there's a calling out, or there's a releasing. And I think with it's a perfect example of kind of everything in our, we've outsourced our power to like big pharma, big corporations, big government. And, it's a perfect example of that, which is kind of sad.
And like, even if we know fertility awareness, like backwards and forwards, most of us aren't living on the land. Like, that's another thing, it's like cultivating a relationship with plants, and, that's a whole process in and of itself. So I think a lot of women find themselves in a time crunch, in this place of urgency of like, oh, I heard that I could use herbs to like release this pregnancy. Where do I get it? Or like, how can I find it immediately? Or like, can I buy it at Walmart? Or like, where do I get it? And so it's complicated. Yeah, it is going to be a total re-remembering, and will also usher us into like the seriousness, like with COVID, and it's like time to get serious. Like, where do you stand? Like, what are you willing to do? How much are you willing to change, your life to kind of live this out, and to see this change, or this remembering, or however you want to call it. And like, I'm sitting here talking to you in my apartment, like a couple stories above the land in a city. And, so yeah, a lot's been taken away from us. And I think we have to acknowledge that and, start to see, okay, once we can kind of see the macro, okay, what are the systems at play that do not want to see us be sovereign beings, do not want to see us, grow our own food. Okay. Once we can see that, then we can really start to, I think, begin again to feel like agents of our own lives, of our own destinies.
And it's why I think the word woman is so important, like, and mother, and, why we can't just be transhumans. Like,
I wonder what the PC term is for like Earth, like the Mother Earth. I wonder if they've captured that yet, like mother, they, them, or like, no, Earth, they, them, or, it's just.
Oh,
it's all
so besides this event coming up in about a week, any other course offerings, anything you want to share with the audience, and or how they can work with you?
Sure. So yeah, my coaching practice has really taken off. I'm using a lot of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming techniques. I also studied hypnosis years ago, and I'm kind of doing that again. And that's all done virtually. I have the podcast, the Whose Body Is It podcast. And what else am I missing? Oh, if you are dealing with this issue in your family, if you have a trans-identified family member, if you are a parent of a trans-identified kid, I work with parents who are navigating what's going on, protecting their kids in schools, taking their kids out of schools, the whole spectrum. So if you are dealing with this, and only find the affirmative care model when you seek out therapy and counselors, which is but they are stuck in the wrong body and they should medicalize, and how can you know how they feel kind of approach. I do counseling for that. And yeah, I'm taking a break from births, but that'll probably change. And then Mary Lou and I have some in-person stuff coming up 2023, which we haven't sussed out exactly, but I think we are both feeling ready to take a break from the virtual realm, and again, bringing women back to the land, skills sharing, all women's health, reproductive health focused. So that's all on my website, whosebodyisit.com. And then you can find me on Instagram at whosebodyisit. That's where I spend a lot of time and have made so many amazing connections. I love Instagram. It's wow. It's really a connector. I know it's wild to say I'm a transhuman as I love Instagram, but you can find me on there. And we woven a lot of webs there. Is that right?
Yeah.
We've woven a lot of webs there. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I feel like this has been an awesome conversation. We've touched on so many things, and I know we'll give the audience, some big reflection points, and, challenging some belief systems maybe. And hopefully if, you're listening and you just have no idea where to start, contact Isabella. So
yes.
our podcast. It's great. Yeah.
Thank you. And I have I forgot to mention, I have free resource guides.
Oh, great.
So if you're afraid to reveal yourself to me and send me an email, you can go on my website. You can download my free gender critical RadFem resource guide that will go through lots of the different facets that we touched on today. And so that's a great place to start, as well as the podcast. A lot of free content to sift through as you clarify, what you think about everything that we just talked about. Start to do your own research, make up your own mind. What do you think is happening, and is anything that is resonating? Does it feel true?
Yeah.
So thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to see you at the event on Friday.
I'm so excited to get there.
Yay! It's going to be so fun.
It'll be great, and probably, like we talked about, the first of many. So
yes.
Stoked for it.
Yay! Yeah. Thank you,
Good
Lindsay.
luck if I don't see you before, but I know it'll be great. Yeah, and I look forward to seeing you in person and hugging you.
I'm so excited. Thank you again for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Bye, Isabella.
Bye.